Well, all right. Welcome back to Close It Now. Sam Wakefield here. I am excited to have this guest on today. We are going to just chop it up. I have no idea where this conversation is going. And as you all know, that's the way we like it on these interviews because we get to pull out some of the best content from the guests as we do that. And as you know, in sales, you have to be able to just spontaneously pivot at a moment's notice. That's why one of the best things you can do is go take an improv class at your local theater. That'll
Hmm.
get you able to pivot on the spot. So today we have a guest. He is the host of the Kitchen Table podcast. So go check out that podcast. Recently, I was a guest on that show, and he has an incredible guest list there as well. He is also the owner of Baden Consulting and Potomac Custom Remodeling, or PCR Roofing for short. This is Mr. Ken, not Kenneth, Mr. Ken Baden on the show today.
Yeah, we were just talking. Thank you, Sam. We were just joking about I think my Zoom and everything else. What I originally set up for some reason has my like full government that I only hear when I'm in trouble from like my mom. So
Now, Kenneth?
yeah, I'm like, what? What? Where? Why? How do you even know that? But
Exactly.
no,
No, it's all
thanks
good,
for having
man.
me on, man.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're here. So, well, we always like to start this, a guest episode with a couple things. One, give everybody a quick little highlight reel, 10,000 foot view of a bit of your journey and how you got here. And along with this, this is the special request. Uh, Weave in some sort of what is your basically your life philosophy, business philosophy, personal philosophy, or if it's tied together, what drives you forward and what's really keeps you motivated. And you can answer those in whichever order that you want to answer them in.
That was a lot to unpack right off the bat, but
Yeah, man,
my
that's how we
mind's
do.
racing, dude. So I'm okay. Let's see if this
We'll just
ADHD.
racing right into it.
Yeah, let's get it. 1,000 foot. I'm gonna try to do my very best and not go off into like a tangent because I love on my show whenever, somebody mentions like when they were born. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah,
So I
right.
promise
We
to
don't have
leave
to
that
go
out.
back quite that far. You
Right.
don't have to go back into the Kenneth phase of life. Just
No,
start
we'll
with
stay
Ken.
away from that.
Yeah,
I'll
start
stick
with
to the
Ken.
juicy stuff. Well, I've been in the remodeling industry since I got into this industry right around I want to say '08. And I was selling insurance, ironically, before that. Right
Hmm.
after college, my internship in college had kind of fell through. I was supposed to have this sweet gig with the government, but it was all meant to be because it ended up introducing me to sales. And my first gig in technically my first gig in sales was selling men's suits when I was 16, and I really enjoyed that.
Ooh, nice.
But this was the first like getting it to work under like a sales as an apprentice, a sales master, if you will, as an apprentice, and
Hmm.
and the master being the agent, Mr. Whitaker. He was he was just a quintessential salesman, man. Like he had the sports, he always had a sports car, a SUV. His wife always drove a white Mercedes, newer, just like he just rotated out these things annually. And I was like, dude, that's so badass. You know what I
Make
mean?
the
I thought
list
it
of
was so cool.
stereotypes. He just checks them off, right?
Oh, dude, he checked every one off, man. And he was like golfing, but he earned this now. Don't get me
Hmm.
wrong. Like he had set his stuff up to where it was ran, his office was ran, and he was able to golf all the time and every one. And I was like, this is all I saw was that. So like
Sure.
that's what I wanted was like I want to be able to golf every day and have these cool cars and a nice house. And his son was a friend of mine, and so he really made the idea appealing. But man, I was a knucklehead. I was very young. Even at 24, I was still very young.
Hmm.
I had joined a fraternity, party, done all that. I just kind of stunted my growth. And there's a whole. I'm not going to get into the. I'm in recovery. That's an important part of who I am. But I don't
Hmm.
think we have a ton of time to dig in. If you ever want to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. It's a big part of who I am.
And we may need to do another episode. I'm about
Sure.
almost a year and a half sober at this point as well.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I love that, man. And I think that's I think it's so cool how people are really embracing that these days, it's, for me, by the way, is really just car accident, painkillers, and, the story has been told across several different platforms at this point.
Sure.
And I could have
Sure.
been in any one of those shows,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And it got really, really bad. But thank God I'm here. And in between those periods of being back up, I would find myself back in sales because it was kind of the thing, that I just fell for. I really, here's the thing. I was always a big dreamer, and the cool thing with sales is it's the closest someone like us gets, at least in my opinion, or in my experience, because I'll never be a basketball player or a football player,
Hmm.
anything like that, right? But I was a big dreamer, man. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a this or that. This is like the closest we can kind of get to that level of like performance in something. And it's
Yeah.
like the top at sales and the competitiveness is there.
Hmm.
And like you want to be the best in the room. And even now with like, the influencer status and the podcast and stuff, and you know what I mean? Things like you and I are doing, like these are the things I think that's why I'm drawn to that is I'm like, I'm chasing that
Yeah.
highest
Yeah.
level.
It reached this
And
like level of stardom in a way, even if it's within your own vertical.
Yep. And a lot of it's, some of these guys are full of it, right? We know that. But
Hmm.
either way, it
You either
makes
have the
me,
experience or you're what they call, what is it, a guru?
yes. And there's a lot of those. There's a whole lot. Be very careful. But at any rate, man, I did fall in love with the fact that I could make as much money as my talent would allow. And that was just something that
Hmm.
allowed a dreamer like me to really do my thing, man. And so every time I would have my periods of being okay, I'd get right back into remodeling sales. That's just what I took to. Fast forward a few years, solar comes on the scene and it's really popping off, and I'm selling roofing and windows and exterior services. So I jump over to solar because that's now the hot thing. And I
No
see the
doubt.
guys doing
Yeah.
all the money and making all the driving the Teslas when it was like, holy crap, you got a Tesla? You know what I mean? That was a wild concept. And
Yeah. When it was one in a few thousand instead of one in a
right,
million.
man. And Solar City was then now as Tesla, and
Yeah.
it's just these guys were killing it back then,
Hmm.
dude, killing it, and I wanted to be killing it, and I always seemed to get in everything like just a second too late, or I wanted to like I couldn't make the move, and I waited till it was felt safe, and then I jumped and made the move, and it's like now we're switching to we're going from PPAs to finance or back and
Hmm.
forth. And the solar coaster has been that way since inception, and roofing's
It
kind of
is a solar
following.
coaster, that's for sure.
And roofing's following suit now. They're both got so heavily saturated. They go so just so many people that shouldn't own businesses, in my opinion, doing this, and it's just now you have a whole lot of options of very crappy companies, and that's a
Hmm.
bad place to be if you're a homeowner. Or someone looking for a job, but I digress. So I got into the natural progression, man. Like once I finally got a good head on my shoulders, I got into sales management, from
Hmm.
sales management to VP, from VP to, VP of another company, a startup. Then I kind of was the startups were my thing because I could make my impact. And man, I got tired this last go around of working for folks that just did not stick to their word because this industry is so saturated and because there's so many options and it's such a low barrier for entry, it tends to attract, I think, a lot of sales guys
Hmm.
that don't have any business owning businesses. Now, look, I'm a sales guy and I own a business, but like I had a lot of healthy respect and fear for making sure that I was in the right place in the right time to be able to take care of other people. Because of what I had gone through, it was imperative that I never put my people in a position like that. You know what I mean? I know what it feels like to not have your check there on Friday. And that is, you just, until you experience, you're like, wait,
Hmm.
what? I worked the hours, I did the thing. Like, where's my money?
Yeah. We got
And it's
paid. It's supposed to be there.
right. And,
I
believe it
made
or
sure we
not,
collected.
there's a lot of people that, and it's sad that I've seen that a few times now. And if you've been in this industry or solar for a while, you probably have a story.
Hmm.
And I do too. So that was kind of, without getting into too many details, I just got over experiencing that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this on my own. So I did with a partner. I let fear kind of hold me back a bit, but everything kind of worked out the way it was supposed to because that partner and I are no longer together, right? And that was a divorce in itself. And like a best friend is no longer a
Hmm.
friend. And I feel like, man, I got 3+ years of my life and built this guy's company up. He didn't know anything about any of this, and I had been
Hmm.
doing this my whole career. Well, you know what? I got a lot of experience. I learned a lot of what not to do.
Yeah.
I'll never do another partnership without an operating agreement. I can promise you that.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be on
Um,
paper.
and but I learned a
That,
lot, man, and I
no
learned a
kidding.
lot of patience, and I didn't lose that experience. So fortunately, when I was able to do this company, Potomac Customer Modeling, and prior to that, actually, Baden Consulting was the first company I started. In between those two, I apologize. It was basically I wasn't sold on the idea of going out and really doing this for myself because it's a lot of risk, man. It's a lot of work. I wanted
Mhm.
to just build these verticals in someone else's company. Like maybe you, Sam, owned a roofing company. I'm like, hey, look, I can help get your guys to where they need to be. That was my gig, and the sales methodology and the systems. And a lot of contractors, even in Southern Maryland, that just don't know about selling at all, right? They're
Sure.
just like, well, I'll just bid on it, bid on everything,
Yeah.
And I wanted to fix that
I
problem.
can
And
show them the stuff that's broken and tell them we can fix it, and surely they'll
right,
get a buy from us.
right, or well, that person wants a screen door, and we're gonna go run that. I'm like, well, why would you run that? Well, you sell them a roof or sell them some side. I'm like, you can't be you got to be kidding. What do you mean? Like they want a screen door,
Yeah.
Like, I'm selling them a whole house. I'm like, okay, you need way more help than I can provide.
No
But
joke.
anyways, man, I found myself, just garnering experience and experience and experience all the way up until the point where even after my partnership, dude, I was uniquely prepared to do this. And now that's kind of where like I have the business now. Potomac Customer Modeling is, an S corp, but I am the only owner. But I
Hmm.
have an excellent leadership team that I actually have equity tied in with them, and that they've earned. And I couldn't be happier about where we are. And as
Hmm.
far as the consulting company goes, it affords me the opportunity to take on folks as I choose to,
Hmm.
get to work with who I choose to, focus on what I really want to, which currently is, if you're in a roofing company or a solar company, I'd like to help you insert one or the other or kind of get you over that hump. Because that's really what I'm most experienced in currently. So
Hmm.
I'm best able to help you in those regards. Otherwise, we'll have to talk in the future. I just really am blessed, man. I got a daughter on the way,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
as
Yeah.
somebody who has been homeless, hopeless, broken, and I can, we'll have to have another episode, brother, because my story goes real dark. I
Sure.
didn't think I was coming back.
Hmm.
I was okay with that. To now, and I say this, and I'm going to say this and shut up. I just was cleaning my daughter's nursery out. She's expected in September, and I was moving the bed out to get her crib in and do all the stuff that my wife is, who's obviously pregnant, was asking me to do. And I found this bag that I hadn't seen in, it's been 8 years this
Hmm.
August, 8 years of sobriety. And I'm like, holy crap, I used to live out of that bag.
Wow.
Live literally. Like I slept outside or I went from basement to basement or couch to couch, wherever I
Mm.
was at, rehab to rehab, jail for a while. Man,
Yeah.
I did all of it. I was homeless a couple times. That bag was with me throughout that whole time. And I went in digging around, found like, some bars of soap, some toothbrushes, and I found these shorts with cigarette holes in them because, we would get so tore up, we just kind of burn our clothing.
Yeah.
And it made me just so appreciative, man, of we get so caught up, I do, in the day to day. And, I'm like, I was teasing earlier about blood pressure. I'm currently like getting my blood pressure checked and stuff. I just turned 40 and like, go figure, somebody who's so high strung that can sometimes impact your blood pressure negatively. And so I got to
Yeah. No
work on
joke.
that. And I want to now because I actually want to be here because I have a daughter on the way. And I
Hmm.
just found myself so overwhelmingly grateful for where I'm at now. But man, I really got to keep that 24/7 because like nothing's changed about that today. It's just me remembering where I came from
Yeah.
as frequently as I can. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
What a beautiful story, man. I love this so much. There's so many things that we could unpack out of that. And in fact, I'd like to for a couple minutes before we get into some other stuff. I know we're going to talk about some business and some sales and some of that type of thing as well. But one of the things we talk about the most on this show is mindset and how to shift, especially how to shift our mindset when we're in maybe a negative place to positive and vice versa, and how to get out of those slumps and those places. So I'd love to hear, when you were in that place, what was your big catalyst? What was that turning point that, because, if we're okay with that, with being at that place, surely something had to change where you shifted and said, you know what, I'm not okay with this. And then so talk about that turning point, and then what are some of the steps you did to climb out of it? Because clearly now great mindset. You're focused on positivity, focused on growth, but I mean, obviously, it wasn't always there. So, give us a bit of mindset here.
Yeah, so I can answer that honestly and say that And I remember August 23rd, 2017, sleeping outside the last time I was before I walked to the hospital and asked for some help. I was out of options.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was resigned to, and I don't want to get into details, but I was okay with not being here, and that didn't end up happening. And so I
Mm-hmm.
found myself sleeping outside, and like, man, I had lost my phone that night. I just didn't have any options. I had to go, walk to the hospital and ask for help. And it just from there, it was kind of like a series of like, I don't have any other option
Mm-hmm.
other than, make an attempt at just getting out of here. And I don't mean to make light of that. This is just my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't for whatever reason. And I can't tell
Sure.
you why. There must have been some sort of like just modicum of hope, maybe. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Had to just accept the help that was coming your way in the form it
Yeah, I
came.
think that's one thing I say a lot is that I think what really shifted was that I always had like, oh, I got to figure this out, got to figure that out, got to figure this out. Like I was so thoroughly beaten finally. I was so hard-headed and so like, okay, well, I know I can do this, but I can't do this. It was always like what I knew. And I had just found myself finally at the place of, dude, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I give up. You tell me what to do and I'll do it. But I'm
Yeah.
just tired of trying to figure this out. And it was, for a guy like me, or I would imagine us, we like to be the answer person or,
Mm-hmm.
the leader or whatever. I just found it, I felt it was like weak for me, for whatever reason. And it couldn't be further from the truth. It was when I gave up and just threw my hands up, like, dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've tried to figure this out. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know why I can't stop. I don't know why I can't stop letting everyone down or hurting everybody I care about. I don't want to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
promise you, but I can't stop. And I don't know what to do. And it was when I fully conceded to that. In fact, that's literally step one in the 12 steps, is fully conceding to our innermost selves that we are blank, alcoholic, addict, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that I guess I did that. And that started me on at least the path of like, okay, you're going to go here. I didn't want to go there, but I was out of options, man. And I was willing to accept the help. And then I became not only willing to accept the help, but eager to, seek out more help. Like, okay, there's funding for this, there's funding for that. Like, I wasn't just, oh, there's nowhere for you to go, so I don't know what's going to happen. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, I need an answer. So, what are the options? Well, there's funding. Okay, how do we get the funding? Okay, well, I'll show you how we get the funding. And then,
Sure.
you can get an extension. Okay, how do we get that extension? So, I would say that the second part of that is taking action.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was willing to accept the help, but then when I accepted the help and they gave me like, okay, well, hey, you could have a fully funded first 3 months and some food stamps, being humble enough to accept it and taking action. And I
Mm-hmm.
did both of those things. And I got into a halfway house and I just my mindset was everything. That's the
Yeah.
difference between me being here and not right now. That's
Yeah.
it.
It's all
Being
mindset.
and you know where it started? The root word, gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude. Gratitude is the difference I've seen between guys coming in there and feeling like they're owed something, or this place is a shithole. Excuse my language. This place is
Yeah, you're
crappy.
good.
This place is a shithole. This place is small. I'm sharing room with three other men. Like, brother, I didn't have a room
Yeah.
anywhere. I'm just glad I don't have to figure out where to sleep tonight.
Yeah, you're not
I'm
have
cool
rain
with
on your
that.
face.
You know what I mean? Like, so like I'm good with that. I'm pretty stoked. I just got my food stamps just hit. I'm gonna walk across the street food line and grab some food, dude. This is cool. I don't have to figure out who to hurt or steal
Mm-hmm.
or manipulate. I'm pretty freaking grateful. And I mean that attitude of gratitude, as cheesy it is, that gratitude
Mm-hmm.
has propelled me above all else, above anything else in life, that gratitude. And I see it in other people now. And it's just like the more gratitude you have,
Mm-hmm.
the more likely you are to get things to continue to be grateful for, period.
I love this so much. This is something that we talk about often on the show. In fact, I did a whole section on this at the event last week at Relentless up in Boston. And there's I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza, but he has a
Yeah,
little
dude.
section. Yeah, so I heard it. It was just a little reel the other day. He's talking about if we spend 15 minutes of gratitude, they've done the actual all the testing on a body, and they have all these studies. It literally I'm getting tingles thinking about it. It literally increases your body's immune system strictly by spending 15 minutes focused on gratitude every day. And it's wild what the incredible things that happen to us when we focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe, I'm listening to Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself right now. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
love
good
his
stuff,
stuff.
man. Well, cool. Well, I want to turn the corner a little bit. I'd love to, because I know you're a beast in sales. You've led some sales teams, you've done a ton of stuff. And I think gratitude actually is a perfect segue into talking about sales because all of the top performers I know constantly focus on a state of gratitude. In fact, I have several people that I do every single morning. We're sending each other our gratitudes for the day and have these gratitude accountability partners, basically. So I see this belt that is on your desk behind you there. Um,
That's the
th-
heavyweight belt, man.
yeah, let's talk
These
about
are
your
all
sales
sales
career there for a
accolades. You
bit.
know, this is we give this out once a month to the top rep, in the company. And
Hmm.
since we've started a second office, it's kind of found its home here. But we just talked about like maybe switching it across offices, but this is such a big part of our history. There's a little money behind it too, but every guy gets a picture with the bell. They do a whole theme song entrance, like whether they want to play like John Cena music or whatever.
Hmm.
But
The
we had a
Rocky
lot
theme,
of fun with
whatever.
that. Yeah, whatever, man. And here are our gold and platinum club members, at least in this office. There's a few others that just don't fit on this desk, but
Hmm.
meaning they've either done 200 or 300,000 gross in a month.
Nice.
And just making sure, and this is just, those guys are just insurance restoration roofers.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing and a couple channels like, oh, I did 200,000 this month. Like, this is on the East Coast. We don't have storms. You know what I mean? Like, there are
Hmm.
guys that are doing, multi-million. Uh, and I've had those gentlemen, but like these guys work their butts off, man.
Sure,
And I'm not
sure.
taking anything from anyone, but like if you're in a
Hmm.
storm market and you have work that just your cup runneth over, these boys have fought every freaking day for every little thing they get. So
No doubt,
we
no
make
doubt.
sure that they're recognized for it.
Oh yeah, I love that. So talk to us a little bit about. There's a lot of people that listen that are in the place right now of. In fact, I get reached out to all the time. They're wanting to grow a sales team. They're wanting to recruit, or they're in, just asking a lot of questions about better ways to manage a team and lead the team. Give us some insight there. What kind of walk us through that? What is it like when you're first starting to build that team, and then what are some best practices as it's growing, and how to keep the culture going, and just that type of topic.
Well, when you're first building it, that's when your fingerprints are going to be on it the most. You know what I mean? So like I try to focus on, I'm all about, if I have a group or a couple of guys, I want to pour into these guys, but I'm also always keeping my eye on like who's the next person that I can kind of delegate to. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And sometimes that doesn't turn out to be correct, but I'm always looking for it. And so that way I can spend not extra time, but maybe, I can start to really focus in on, okay, let me add a responsibility or two to this person and just see how they handle it
Hmm.
while I'm working with these others. If I was building up a team raw organically right now, with no, not a lot of capital. A lot of the times I did this back in the day, for the first few companies I did, it was as grassroots
Sure.
as it could possibly be. It wasn't until now when we had like real capital behind this, and that's an entirely different beast because you can kind of take the time to build it up, and you don't have that luxury when you're just getting going and you've got no real capital behind
Hmm.
you, and you've got to continue to by the way, we've got to sell while we're creating this team. So I'm when I did my first few of these, I was taking, canvassers with me, dropping them off to canvas, maybe taking our sales rep that was in training with me to the close and having them watch me
Hmm.
go back, pick up the canvassers. I mean, essentially whatever it takes, but, without getting too in the weeds because you may or may not have some capital, you may or may not have to do it grassroots. One thing that's going to be a consistent or a constant is you dictate the culture. You know what I mean? So like what things you want to set as standards, you have to set as a standard like right away.
Hmm.
So early on, if I expect them to be on time or do things like, the whole like idea of like do as I say, not as I do is not it's not gonna work early on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need to set that.
Leading
by
by
being on
example.
time. Yeah, by leading by example and doing all of those things and getting them to buy in so much so that ideally you get really blessed and you find yourself in a situation, like me now, where I have a couple guys here that have been with me across three companies and get all upset when someone takes off or doesn't show full effort or whatever. And I'm
Mhm.
like, yes, that's a little mini me, man.
Yeah,
And
they're
I, and
taking
I'm like,
ownership of the role.
yes, yes. And they care just as much if, or close as I do, and it's like, man, that's beautiful because, early on they're huffing and puffing, and then, a few years later, and they're like, man, what does this guy think he is? He's not pulling his weight,
Yeah.
because that's what you can hope for is that, you build a culture where now these guys feel like it's part, they're part of that
Hmm.
and they care about it just as much, but I would say to be very cognizant of the standards and practices that you set, even on an unconscious level. Like if you wanted them to be on time and meetings to start and end on time and be organized and be clean cut and be sharp, I mean, you need to lead by example.
Sure. So when say you're back in that grassroots, because that's where a lot of teams are, especially in some of the other trades. They're right now, especially we're about to get in for a lot of trades into the busier seasons. And I've been hearing a lot, man, this is going to be it's going to be a long, hot year. We need more people. We need more salespeople. We need more technicians. We need more people doing the work. So when you're starting that, where are you recruiting from? What are you looking for?
We have a few different recruiting mechanisms. We've used a few, there's a few acronyms out there, but
Sure.
they're all basically
And
Indeed.
I don't want to hear ZipRecruiter and
Right, right.
we know those
We
good people are already employed. We don't need the people that don't have a job.
Right. We've paid to learn, from different folks, and we've kind of created a hodgepodge or an amalgamation of different things we've learned from different recruiters
Hmm.
or whatever. And we have our own. What we run Indeed ads where our VAs just kind of make sure that they're constantly on top of them,
Hmm.
and we'll do two group calls a week and then those group calls become individual calls. But we also have a recruiter currently that I'm trying out to kind of get a more direct, like if I need a canvasser or a PM or a very specific production or very specific hire, he
Hmm.
can focus on that while we're focused on getting salespeople and only salespeople for this group, the bigger like canvassing or salespeople on the Indeed portion. The recruiter that I have as a backup option can focus on like we need a production manager or a QA.
Sure.
We could do it too, but he can really zoom in on that and say, "Cool, I got you two things set up tomorrow," because we're focused on hiring salespeople and canvassers.
Hmm.
And then finally, we have Handshake. I think is a connecting colleges. We do things with different colleges, whether it's tables or booths or career fair days or
Okay.
virtual connections. We're looking for younger. Not doesn't have to be, but like you know, malleable, recent college grads,
Hmm.
service-based, serviced industries, definitely ex-athletes. Give me that all day, every day. The
Yeah.
competitor. Um, we've even tried like for canvassing, like recently, political canvassers. That was a terrible ratio. Like I don't think we had a single one that ever that didn't work out. So
Sure.
I wouldn't recommend
You
that.
don't know till you try, though,
Yeah,
correct?
right. We were like, well, they've done canvas and just not one worked out. So, but service-based industries, tend to work out really well.
Hmm.
The young guys and gals that aren't used to making a ton of money and you can show them a path to making some really good money and they're young and they haven't been probably beat down by, I don't know, man, some of these other folks in the industry that just
Hmm.
maybe haven't treated them right. And so they're still very excited, and hopefully you take advantage of that and you show them how they can make some really good money because to them, 75 might be awesome, man. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah. Yeah.
canvassing, but for sales, that's for where I'd start with canvassing. But for us with canvassing, our intention is then to kind of farm team that thing into all right, now let's keep our eyes on who are our best closers in canvassing,
Hmm.
right? Because canvassing is a universal language. I mean, canvassing is
Sure.
you're showing me how you overcome adversity. You're showing me how you deal with rejection on a daily basis. And statistically speaking, the best closers in canvassing are the best closers in closing, period.
No doubt. No doubt.
So we're looking for that, and that's our farm system. But if I needed like one of my consulting clients right now is like, hey, that's great. I'm all about it, because we want to build that culture. We want to build those reps, both in canvassing and in closing or whatever we've got going on. We want our fingerprints on it, our training, our sales methodology, our culture, our core values. If you go, Brian, bring in what I call the emergency band-aid, right, is
Hmm.
the guy or gal that has the experience from the other companies.
Yeah.
And maybe you lure them over by offering them more and temporarily, but you just have to know if you're going to do that, it's got to be strategy because it's a band-aid. It's a
Hmm.
band-aid for a reason.
Yeah.
Like you lure them over because they make more, and I think if you do it, like I used to be vehemently against it, but I've done it with a strategy like, look, I don't have time to do this right now. At least this guy or gal will get me off of this, and I can focus on this and get my team built up,
Yeah. We
and
know
at
they're going
least
to
they'll
write
close.
business and bring revenue
Right,
while we're planting the
right.
seeds and creating the
Yes.
farm.
100%. And that's
Wow.
cool, man. And if they stay for a couple months and, it's just as long as your expectation is not like, well, they're going to be here forever. And no, they're probably going to do what they just did and leave, go over here for more money. But
Mhm.
hey, if they fill the role that you expected, it's just, be smart and be strategic. And so that's what I recommended was, what, let's find a guy or gal for you that has experience
Mhm.
that'll get you and it's a father son combo that'll get you guys out of this and you can focus on building your teams up
Yeah. Yeah. They
and
can work
building
on
the
the
future.
business, not in it now.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
it's
for
really
sure.
hard to do if you're trying to do everything. It's almost impossible.
Hmm.
Train the new guys, sell the deals, do the day to day. It's just not, at some point, it doesn't work.
Hmm. Well, let's do this. I love that you've brought up canvassing and talked about it several times now because I am all about door knocking. I'm all about canvassing.
Me too, brother. Let's
And
beat that drum until cows come home.
100%. The interesting thing that I find, and this is why I want to camp out here, because every other home service, bar none, solar, roofing, construction, windows, you name it, believes in canvassing. I mean, the solar company I was with for 3 years, in 8 years, they've put up $1.2 billion in sales, almost exclusively from canvassing. So companies that are your well they quote unquote the skilled trades, so HVAC, plumbing, electrical, you will almost never see
Right.
canvassing. And it blows my mind because they don't understand the type of growth that's available. So I'd love to camp out on this for a second and give us a little bit more perspective on why canvassing is effective and how it works a little bit.
Okay.
Because so some setting some context here. The reason that I think a lot of it was the digital heroin, as my friend Jonathan Bannister says. You could just buy leads, so dump more money and buy leads, and we'll just go and close them. So that it's almost like they have it backwards. To grow their company, they think I have to have more leads to feed my closers, so I can't hire more salespeople until we have more leads because they don't have any requirement for an amount of self-generated business. Of course, that's the opposite of if you want to grow a business, you get more people to sell stuff. So,
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about that paradox and how that works with, say you're starting a company from scratch and you want to grow it quickly, but you want to do it the organic way and farm this team and turn it into that. What does that look like? Is that upside down, or is that, how are you thinking about that lead versus, you know, the sales and canvassing type of model? Because I know this is a common conversation you probably have.
Yeah, 100%. It's a chicken or the egg thing. It's all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm experiencing it in some ways, now and definitely with my other consulting client. But I wanted to touch on one thing that you asked me, the first question you asked me, which was like, can you break down canvassing and kind of like why,
Hmm.
what it's all about and why you think it works when you
Yeah.
originally were saying that these electricians and these folks that just don't get it and kind of explain sort of like why we are so attracted to it. And the
Hmm.
reason in short is sure you can pay for leads, uh, but you have to understand that you dig a little deeper. Okay, well, how many other people are getting these leads? Oh, who God knows? Who knows? I mean, heck,
Hmm.
Angie's List just had that whole thing that got overturned, but where that was going to flip the whole industry upside down to where the homeowner then had to pick you, But look, we already know they're selling it, whoever they are, the middleman, to like five, six, seven that you know of, other homeowners or roofers or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Electricians. So you know that undoubtedly the most likely objection when you go to pitch or offer your service is gonna be like, okay, cool. Well, I got the other person coming because by nature, the source you clicked on, that's the deal, right? And you pay X and the return might be Y. And it's not horrible, but I've watched a lot of guys go broke paying for leads.
Hmm.
There's not an element, there's just a huge lack and element of control. I would say if you're in a nutshell, if you're going to spend money on leads like that, they should be the side dish, not the main course. You need
Hmm.
a main course, and the main course needs to either be canvassing, call center, or maybe both. But it's a residual source of leads that you can lean into yourself and you can give the scripts and train the people and cultivate the atmosphere. And if the lead sucks, you're not paying for it because you can go right to Joey or Sally and say, yo, what happened here? This does not meet our qualifier. Why would you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that is the most powerful. Now you have your own internal supplier of leads. And sure, turn these other buckets on over here, right? And that's fine. But like mix those in with your own source. And and the reason really is exclusivity and margin
Hmm.
and control. So what I mean by that is okay, comparative to those types of leads, your Angie's leads, your Porch, those like that are going to be you're going to have a lot of competition
Hmm.
for which is going to drive down the overall margin, right?
Hmm.
Because it's going to
Hmm.
be a race to the bottom,
Sure.
which
Yeah. The
everybody hates.
expensive PPCs and LSAs and all the different,
100%. So
all
your
those
big
things.
baller companies that charge a premium are not likely to be on there because they know we don't stand a chance if we're not unless we're first in. So who's going to be on there, right?
Hmm.
Like the guys that are fighting for the middle ground or a race to the bottom. So by nature of the type of lead source, it's going to have a smaller margin versus knocking that door and saying, "Hey, did you know that your windows are bad? And here's why. I've noticed some seal failure. Yeah, but the house was built in the '80s, wasn't it? These people probably never thought about doing any of these things, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But you're training your people who are out there looking for these things to look for X, Y, and Z. Seal failure, fogging on the windows, an age of a house, a
Hmm.
size of a house. These are my parameters, right?
Hmm.
And then you're teaching them to go knock and educate a client briefly enough to where that client has questions. Questions are a great turning point for it. That's a great reason why the expert should come out and answer that question for you, sir. Right now, you've got them at least, oh, wow, there's something wrong with my home. Sure, it's a free estimate. I'll take a listen, right?
Hmm.
But that exclusivity drives an increase in margin. So now you have a much more exclusive lead where you're not likely to have three, four, five, six, seven other bids, which is going to drive up your margin, right? Means you make more money.
Hmm.
You have a much better opportunity, a much lower closing percentage because, again, there's not seven or eight other companies. If you know that someone else is coming behind you, you better train your rep to get on that phone and make sure that that dang thing is canceled
Hmm.
because they'll still show up, right? And they'll try to take the deal. And it's just that's next level stuff. But in short, that's why
Yeah.
exclusivity and of course, if there's a problem with the lead, I can go right to the source and not call Angie's List for 2 hours and say, "Hey, you sent me five bogus leads," and they're fighting back and forth and trying to like get credit for it. Whereas we can go right to the source and say, "Joey, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Why did you set this?" You know what I mean? It's just
Hmm.
those are three big ones right there as
I
to
love
why
it.
you might be interested.
The other one that comes to mind for me, and this is one that I've always liked, especially when I'm starting to introduce this to companies that just never really have considered canvassing, is you get to pick your market. Are you tired of getting the leads all over the area, driving forever, and then you show up and I when I was years ago, when I was especially a few of the solar leads when I was trying to buy them instead of doing this, one time I showed up and it was just a junkyard. There was no house there. It's like, how did this even get on my list? you know? And so it's like when we're buying leads, you never know what you're showing up to. And then so you get to pick the exact house, the exact age of the house, the exact condition of the house. You can isolate the homeowner's demographic as far as level of income and every single thing. And so we know exactly who we're knocking the door for. And so the likelihood of being the optimal buyer, once we understand who our best fit client is, then we just talk to them. instead of trying to shotgun everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's an excellent point, man. Is also market. That's a huge point that that's how you hire territory reps. I mean, the whole
Hmm.
thing's built around it, right? Like, okay, well, we want to go here. Okay, cool. We're going to hire a closer out there, and there we go. Now we're there.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Of course, you train them up and everything, but now
Sure.
I have one here, I have one here, I have one here, and here. Hiring territory reps. We have a canvassing team. We can easily have a call center follow up in those areas and pick to follow up in those areas, and
Hmm.
you can do some really cool stuff with coordinated call and even ground yard sign campaigns, some guerrilla marketing. But
Sure.
give me
So,
that all day long, man.
oh, I love it. I love it. So, let's turn the corner into the chicken and egg conversation,
Yes.
because that's always the struggle, is like, so, and talk to this a bit, because you can outpace pretty quickly production
Yes.
if you're not careful. So, and this is really where the biggest concern comes in, and why people that don't do canvassing, I think, are scared to do it. Is the second they understand that, I could put two people on the street and outsell your entire company right now by weeks, if they actually knew what they were doing. So talk to that interaction a little bit, and how to gauge for that, and to plan for it.
Yeah, I get it because, the worry is, well, if I go and hire some canvassers and those canvassers come in and learn and those canvassers are successful and I don't already have some closers trained up, well, then we're just going to burn leads. Those canvassers are going to get angry and quit. Or
Hmm.
I hire closers and they don't have leads yet, or I hire them both at the same time. And what if one takes longer to get going? Well, again, it's always a chicken or the egg thing. Like for me, I think it's harder to find and get I can train closers pretty easily for whatever reason. I don't know why. For me,
Hmm.
it's just been easier to like find but get my guys and gals out there in the field, get them used to it. There's a high attrition rate, a real high turnover rate for the folks that are just now starting in the doors that have never done it. If they have experience, they know what they're getting into, but like you kind of need to cultivate that a lot
Hmm.
more. And that's going to take a little bit more getting going. But to that point, if you start on the door, you can get a lot more creative with that. And I think that's where you're going is like, the client in Minnesota, their folks are willing to do like, hey, we'll knock and sell. And I have guys in my team right now in insurance restoration that knock for themselves. We also
Hmm.
support them, but we pay them very well for it and have learned retail closing mechanisms. And, Andy just last week knocked one Thursday. We're set it up for an appointment Friday and sold it Friday, right
Hmm.
then and there, just like a retail. So like you can get more creative with boots on the ground and I just always start boots on the ground. Now you could hire a couple closers and just, turn on one of those lead sources for a very minimal, modest budget and feed them with that while you're getting your canvassers going. That's another option. It just because you might be in a different situation. You might have already some closers and you're like, what do I do with them if I'm trying to get these
Hmm.
canvassers going? Like, okay, well, what other lead sources do you have?
Sure. Sure.
Kind of lean in on those for right now, but you're really going to want to get those being the canvassers going. And if you don't
Hmm.
have either of the two, I'd focus on your doors and your field marketing first because you're going to want to get those guys to be animals. And you can teach, like I can run. So if I have three or four guys and I could run and it was just me from the very beginning, again, that's what I do. You're going
Hmm.
to knock, I'll close. You three knock, I'll close. I can go grab another guy or two to help close pretty quick, but I say pretty quick. It takes me about a week or two to teach them, but uh, still, I mean, I've always had me, so that's a hard, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, I can always run it myself.
Sure.
At least close it. But to get guys to get out there, get in the field, get their butt kicks on the door, and then get good enough to where like, okay, maybe I train you, but you've already learned the door now. And while you're kind of transitioning, like, look, you're gonna have to knock for yourself a little bit. There's a lot more options in the field than there are with closers that are just like, I'm not knocking, I'm not doing anything. However, there's plenty of times where I've been responsible for, hey, look, when you run this lead, knock the four people around the house, dude. Like you do that every time.
Yeah.
And that was just standard operating procedure for me at some of the places I've been. So that's other things that you can
100%.
implement too. that I just don't think are being utilized
Hmm.
enough. Kind of the blend of the two. Like
Yeah.
you will feed you, but you need to knock to all the, around the 4 points of all the ones we send you,
Hmm.
and we'll send you what we can, but you need to be able to knock for yourself because that's where you started. It's just,
Yeah.
you can get a lot more convenient by adding elements of the two.
100%. And that's what I always train. It's like every appointment you run, sales appointment, every single install that goes in, you're knocking around that house. Introduce yourself, all the things. So let's so say we've got a handful of closers already ready to go, but we've been feeding them for, say with digital and with our other means. And we introduce, say we bring on a handful of, a few canvassers that have some experience. Now the concern is, okay, this is working really well. What if we outsell the production team to actually, produce and do the work itself? So that's
Mm.
that's more that's a lot of times the conversation that I have with the, guys in HVAC especially, but with plumbing and electrical also, but especially with HVAC, because they're like, man, we can't get out a week, 2 weeks necessarily because of, if somebody's air conditioning's out, it's hot. So we got to get there in a reasonable amount of time. So talk about that back and forth, because I know even roofing and others, it's like, it can't go months out if it's sold. And then what happens? Somebody else comes in and says, hey, we can do this
Yeah.
tomorrow. Why are you with
Yeah.
them?
I love that question. And yes, you're right. And I think that speaks to your forecasting abilities and scale and your model, and having the time and effort and energy to sit down and kind of, even recently we had to do this where me and some of the other leaders just spent the last couple Saturdays in the beginning of the year, and we just devoted to revamping our model and making sure that we didn't miss any pieces in terms of comp packages, or is there anything we didn't think about as we scale out that we're going to, oh crap, we got to hire a manager for such and he's going to
Mhm.
command such and such salary and such bonus. And now where do we take it from? Because we want to hit a net of this, and we run, that's a nice net, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
that risks taking us below that because we've got to hit our goals in order to achieve that. We've got to stay below our overhead percentage of, this and our
Hmm.
marketing percentage of this. So I'd say knowing all of those things first and foremost, forecasting, but it doesn't have to be rocket science, man. It can be like, okay, how much can one team handle? And how much can, if my sales folks can produce an extraordinary amount, you know, I'd rather be in a position, put it to you this way, and Kurt Lennington told me this, and I did the both, by the way, and I paid a very big price for doing this. So I did the adverse last year. I had always had the success in the sales room. So I'm like, dude, we'll get the volume. We always do. We've always 2, 3, 4x, and we're starting our new office this year. Well, man, that just proved to be way harder, way more expensive, way more everything. It's in business always that way.
Hmm.
And and we got our butts kicked for a while because we had brought in extra production and top flight production management and assistant management, and like really went all in on production without the volume being there to justify it, to make sure that just when we did, and look, we ended up having to like cut a lot of folks, and it was a hard lesson to learn, man. And I won't make that again.
Hmm.
And what Kurt told me, Lennington, who's had a lot of success in this industry, and in fact, he's really one of the OGs in terms of the private equity game with roofing currently. He said, I'd rather be in the position of having all the sales and have to like, try to scramble to find some extra, teams and installers and production folks than not. You know what I mean? And like, I'm like, dude,
It's a
I
much
totally
better
hear you.
problem to have than the
Right.
opposite.
Right. Than having all these production folks sitting around, not with nothing to do, just overloading payroll, and you have no sales. That is
Hmm.
a very scary problem. And so, or, maybe you have the same amount of sales as you had last year, but now you anticipated 3x. And so you still are making less money than you did last year because you have more overhead.
Hmm.
So, I'd speak to, I get it. I understand that thought process because I did it. And I can tell you I paid a price for it. And
Hmm.
so now what we're doing, even right now, the best you can hope for, man, at least in my experience, is we're keeping a very firm pulse on that expansion, right? Week by week, month by month. Like, it can only catch you off so much off guard. Like, okay, we can go out 30 days and then we double up, then we triple up. Went to that alarm bell to where it's like, hey, dude, we're at capacity.
Hmm.
Knowing that, okay, cool. Well, then now we need to say, okay, we need another crew,
Right.
right? And how quickly can we? Let's get some interviews. Let's get those guys in. Let's get their paperwork done. Let's have our B crew and start feeding the B crew some jobs so we're not completely foreign with them and we're just trying them out. We're in a jam, right?
Hmm.
And that's how it's worked, man. You start feeding the second crew more and more as much as you can, trying to keep crew one busy as best you can full time always. So they're happy, and then you start working in the second as much as you can, and eventually now you have the similar relationship you have with the first crew as you do with the second, and you work in the third, right? And you start
Hmm.
getting to know someone else because there's nothing better than having that subcontracting crew that knows how you want things done. Exactly, they know the expectation. They treat it as if it's them.
Hmm.
It's nothing more scary than when you're first trying out a sub and you're like, damn it, I hope. Or an installer that's just starting and you got a
Yeah.
bunch of new installers. You're like, these dudes better uphold our quality and our standard of work. And so,
Sure.
you
Uh,
know,
Sounds like the theme here is just become a better manager and trainer in your own organization,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
and
pretty
constantly
much.
be checking in with them.
EOS
Inspect,
is a
or
great
was it
tool.
inspect what you
Yeah.
expect, right?
Yes, 100%. EOS is a great tool. Making sure you do, toolbox checks, where you pop in and just, have your, hey, here is our standard on a piece of paper.
Hmm.
It's a checklist, a standard this is how we expect drip edge to be. Here's how we expect our caulking to be, right? Like, and I'm signing off on it every single time as a QA rep. And if it comes back that the customer is not happy, I'm going to look and see if the QA rep signed off on it. We have a quality assurance rep on each job. Like, you know, there are standard operating procedures and people and roles and things you can put in place to for quality assurance for sure. But
Hmm.
ultimately, it's also making sure that you're just forecasting appropriately. Okay, well, you're right. What if? What if we do 10 million? What are we going to do? How many how many crews do we need to have? If we
Hmm.
scale this out, if we hit this number, then you should have a key performance indicator that tells you when it's time to hire another crew and then another crew and then another crew. So at least being prepared. And
Hmm.
sometimes that math doesn't always work, man. Or it looks great on paper and then it's like, damn, what we thought was our threshold just isn't our threshold.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's a living, breathing organism. You have to
Yes.
adjust along the way.
But you can do your best to try and get out. If you don't do that, you will definitely be in a jam. So if you
Sure.
at least are constantly trying, working, living in that, breathing in that,
Hmm.
checking up on your stuff, being a better manager, staying on top of the numbers, um, you'll be all right. Because the rest of it's business ownership, brother. You know what
Sure.
I mean? It's what we
Yeah.
have to navigate. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah, no joke. There's something you mentioned here. Say this is fun. This is getting really getting into be a fun conversation. I'm loving this. So you mentioned something because this. So for everybody listen, this is scaling your business crash course 101 here. So one of the things that is always a back and forth, almost controversial topic is having your production in-house versus using subcontractors.
Mm. Mhm.
And that, you can pitch that either direction depending on, what your position is. So when is talk to us a little bit about that. Obviously we've got to try people before we bring them in. It's hard a lot of times to employ them and then find out they're awful. And
Mhm.
so that whole journey is like, when do we know when it's time to add? And clearly we have our production KPIs. Okay, we're starting to max this. We need to start thinking about bringing on more. But when is the right time to and using subs? I know roofing and that type of vertical is slightly different than
Right.
like a HVAC or something, but at the same time, it's not, because there's plenty of companies I know that that's all they use is exclusively subcontracted in production teams and installation teams. So when is a good time, or how do you know if somebody is a right fit for your organization? And do you exclusively run with subs? Is it good to have a mix? Is the goal to constantly be bringing them in house? over time if they're open to that, and then that's the journey to find good crews and already have them trained, is use them as subs first until they have hit your standard, and then you can bring them in house. And this is a whole conversation here.
Yeah.
Curious to hear your perspective on it.
That's again, this is fun for me too because it's a lot to unpack. And to your point, so roofing, full disclosure, if you're in roofing, anyone that tells you that, oh yeah, these guys work for me, there's probably such a small, maybe 1% of the 1%. I mean, even the biggest companies that I know that they said for a multitude of reasons. One, we only work on roofing, I don't know, maybe 10 months out of the year through the winter, to have these guys on your insurance and your retainer and all these things, it just be like, for what? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And drive up, it's just from just a cost and risk as a business owner, these are two big variables for you to consider. Profit, cost, and risk, and
Hmm.
both of which there's not a box that to be checked where it's like, well, now you might be able to get more aggressive at a huge size and bringing them on board, sure. I just feel like our industry is so like I'm very transparent. Like first of all, like even with our manufacturers and so on, they give us all our accolades and install. Uh, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a diamond or I'm a platinum installer for OC, right? Well, it's not the installers that get that. It's us, the GC, and then we, but them by proxy, they trust us to be professional enough to use, the proper GC or subcontractors,
Hmm.
and then our credentials pass over.
Sure. So the quality is there, and
Right.
timeliness and
And now,
professionalism,
to be
etc.
fair, because we are a platinum, we do hold a very strict standard and have a QA on site, and that QA is making sure that, the jobs are being installed, that the way that they're supposed to be installed. And we've got, we work with subs very intimately. And our subs, man, are right there on that threshold of like, my wife's an attorney, we don't play games when it comes to like, classifications,
Sure.
but they want to be involved. Like the owner of that company is basically he wants to be a team. He wants to be a partnership. He
Hmm.
wants to sit in on our L10s. He's here for a lot of the meetings and
Yeah.
stuff because he wants to know like how can we get better? How can we be better? That
Yeah. Treat
as
them
long
so
as
well
I've
they want
got
to work
that
for you first.
exactly. And it's almost like with him now if we had to say you have to do X, Y, or Z, things could get, weird, but we don't have to do that because fortunately these guys are professional and they basically it's very much at this point, the only difference is the classification in terms of taxes. That's it. Like
Sure.
he treats this the same way. He show up the same way. Now we have an operating agreement that we have for contractors, and it states like you'll come out this time, you'll do this, you'll operate by this standard. Now again, we can only, but it's an agreement, between two
Hmm.
businesses. Like, hey, this is an independent contract agreement. If you want to come in, excuse me, and do business with Potomac, you're going to sign this, and you're going to agree to this price point, or you're also going to agree to these ethics, and like this is what we do, and again, not crossing any lines in terms of classifications, but we had a
Hmm.
sub say, hey, I can't sign this, and say, all right, cool, man. It's pretty. It's pretty straightforward. It just says you'll stand by your work and things like that. But
Sure.
there are elements there too that we can hold. Now, if I was in HVAC, I'd probably sub first, like a 90-day, just for, again, risk cost. But frankly, the sooner I could, I feel really good about somebody that they meet our standards, I'd probably give them a quarter or a 90-day probationary period as long as I could afford to and it was cost effective because I'm always going to have a pulse on cost effectivity. Like that's just, of course, right?
Hmm.
Like profit is the thing that drives everything else, right? Of course, I'm going to be looking at that. Then I would definitely be looking to convert if it were like, service work for HVAC, because I'm not totally unfamiliar. I worked for the sheet metal union for a bit. My brother's a local 26 rep. I mean, I've been on
Hmm.
site with the 602 boys. That's the sheet metal or the HVAC union here.
Sure.
Um, if it were residential or commercial, but commercial work, if you start to become so big you're a GC, you're subbing everything out anyhow, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
like, but it's just a whole different world. And that I'm not, other than doing some work in it. I
Hmm.
would just say it depends on, if I'm residential HVAC, I'm knocking doors. You know, I'm looking to bring those guys and gals in as soon as I can, but from a risk element, there's nothing wrong with like the probationary period,
Hmm.
bringing them in. Makes it easier if it doesn't work out. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
hey. we tried. Here's the onboarding. There's no, you know, my attorneys don't have any issues with that. In fact, you know, anytime we're kind of unsure of what to do, they're like, look, why don't you just bring them on as a, you know, 1099 for like a
Yeah.
30 or 90-day offer. Like, hey, here's what we're going to do. And if it works out, then we'll bring you
Yeah.
on as an
Try them
actual
before you
employee.
buy them type of a model.
Yeah. And you could
Yeah.
certainly do that too. But for me, when I would do that would be when I knew that the standard, and before I risked, I want to bring them in. And as a business owner, my job is to constantly provide opportunities to my people, lest I risk losing them. Like that's
Yeah.
just the way it goes.
Hmm.
So I'd want to bring them in before I realize it too late. Like, oh, dang, this guy's or gal's really great. And they decide either to stay a sub or go off somewhere else, right? So
Sure.
there's that fine line of like waiting too long. So, you know, create your mile markers and
Hmm.
performance things that you're looking for, and you know, perhaps make it an earn it based model. Like, hey, when you achieve these things here, this many installs, this many things, this many 10-star, 5-star installs, you get this bonus, and we're bringing you in, or
Hmm.
whatever. But I'd be looking to do it before it was not an option or it became an issue. So
Sure.
ultimately, if I could afford it in HVAC and service, I'd probably be, or I work with a group that I know works the way I want to work, and it'd probably be like one company, and that's
Yeah.
it. You know what
Yeah.
I
No
mean?
doubt.
And they're
Yeah.
right there with me on everything.
I love this. Yeah. And for everybody listening to what we did here in Austin years ago is in the off season, we would have, we'd max out at 8 or 10 crews typically in the busy season. And in the off season, what happened is the helpers would end up, they would, and they knew that this was the model. Off season, we slow down, so we would shrink down to 4 or 5 crews where all the foremen on the crews would team up, and that would be the crew. And the helpers would go off, and they had no problem. They liked it. They would go work at a pizza place or do whatever else they wanted to do the rest of the year. And the second we kicked back up again, all the foremen would call their helpers, and now they're back into the same teams. And so you can, depending on your market, everybody, and depending on how your organization runs, you can have some flexibility here. It's not an all or nothing. It can be
Mhm.
back and forth, or have those sub crews that on demand when when you've sold more than what your staff can handle. Have the ones that you work with periodically that come in and pick up the slack for you. So there's some hybrid models in there too that can be pretty effective
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. In fact, to your point, like if you get so overwhelmed, like you were saying, and it's like, well, you know, you should have a good relationship with the sub then, because, you know, for us, as I said, like when I say sub, like no one knows outside of internal people, like they just know Potomac, right? But like
Hmm.
I'm just very candid because that's silly, man. Like you'd probably eye roll me if I told you anything else if you knew the industry here. But like to your point with HVAC, it's different. So, but okay, we get overwhelmed with work. Well, you should probably have a good relationship with a sub that you can maybe, hey man, can you come in help us out? Like, and that'd
Yeah.
be a good way to kind of bridge that gap too. So a
Well, and
hybrid
here's
model
the
would be
even
great.
branding kind of shortcut. So just the perception is the right. Just have your own wrapped trailer that they come up and drag your trailer to the job site. It's wrapped
There
with
you
your
go.
company logo.
There you
So
go.
the homeowners aren't like, oh, it's just a magnetic sign on the side of their truck.
Yeah.
So there's lots of ways
Yeah.
to
I did
it's
that for a
it's
while.
branding.
Yeah. I did the magnetic sign for a while, but no, we yes, but to your point, like a trailer or something like a real truck. Hey, you can take our trucks or whatever, but a
Hmm.
lot of these guys have no problem doing that as long as you pay on time. You know what
Yeah,
I
that's
mean?
it.
Like they're
Pay on
fine.
time and pay a little bit better than everybody else, and you'll
Yeah.
get the best and get to keep them.
Yeah. 100%, man.
Love this, man. This is so good. So, I can't believe we're already close to time here.
Wow.
We've been chopping it up. So one thing that this podcast is known for, and I definitely want to give you the opportunity to give everybody talk about what you do, especially with Baden Consulting, how you help, all their contact information. But before you do, one thing we're known for is giving everybody something that's actionable right away. Like drop a nugget for people that maybe they've been thinking about, expanding. This whole the canvassing idea is becoming a hot topic, especially the way digital is going right now, and the cost of new client acquisition is through the freaking roof. So
Yeah.
companies that are winning are basically imagining, if the internet didn't exist, how would I go to business?
Hmm.
And so drop a couple nuggets on people. What can they do to get started along that process if they've just really want to, but just don't know how to start?
If the internet didn't exist, is
Yeah,
that the
that or to get to step into, yeah, so maybe one idea there, and then one idea around companies that want to step into getting some canvassers, what that might look like.
okay? Well, I would just a very easy nugget to digest would be some of the basics that I was given when I was, really, really new, and it's the three touch rule. So you want them to see you at least three times before your phone rings or they make a decision to choose you. So what we used to do is we would say, okay, well, we're going to put our yard signs out. We want to go in this territory. And we decided because it's appropriately aged homes, the appropriately sized homes, and that's where we want to be. And we want to send out our direct mailers would be one option, very cheap and inexpensive. You can even do them yourself. You can get a list from your local UPS and literally do it for pennies on the dollar and send out a little, you know, a hand sign. I might type something up, send it out, hand sign like, "Hey, we'll be in your area next week," right? Or 2 weeks from now, or I'd put out some yard signs as well, pay somebody to put yard signs out or do it myself on the weekends in that same area. So now they're seeing the yard signs in that area, right at all the major traffic intersections, the major entrances and exits to the neighborhoods. Then I'm sending in my mailers, even hand mailers or
Hmm.
not, right, the next week. And then I'm sending in my canvas team. And now it's like, hey, I don't know if you guys, saw our yard signs or if you've, heard anything about us. We're a PCR. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're the freaking people that have been bugging the hell out of it. And maybe they don't even remember where,
Hmm.
but on an unconscious level, at least, and I don't even remember where or how long it's been since I first heard that. But if they've seen it at least three times in recent memory, that, oh, yeah, they're more likely to say yes, right? Is really what that breaks down to. And it might be pseudoscience, it might be BS,
Hmm.
but it's worked well for me. And it's a good intro into like marketing 101, field marketing 101. And just if you continue to serve that, like, and be strategic with, I think you'll have a lot more success than just arbitrarily bebopping around with canvassers.
Sure. So one quick follow up there, because this is what a lot of people that have never really spent any time in this world understand, is how long should you stay in one area? So just knock it a couple times and move on, or where do you hit that saturation point when it's time to?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually a very good question because you're right. If you don't know, you don't know. We do not, we would not come back. So let's say we cover a whole neighborhood. We're not coming back tomorrow unless we haven't covered it. If we've covered that neighborhood, we'll see you in no sooner than usually a month. You know what I mean? Sometimes
Mhm.
a couple months. Like, way back in the day, man, we'd have this little map of Maryland back in our office, and our canvassers would just rotate like clockwise, right? And they would just zip code, zip code, zip code, zip code, zip code. And it usually took them a couple months before they got back. And they're going to be back, but
Mhm.
they would not ever be back any sooner than a month, because you come right back and it's like now Joey instead of Tyler hits the same door, but it's like they were just there 2 days ago. Like, I just told your guy to F off. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like, let's give it some time to slow down. We should have got some. Now let's come back and get the ones we didn't get.
Yeah.
I think a month minimum is a good
Other
amount
than,
of
of course, the
time.
ones that are like, "Hey, come back in 2 days," and
Right. Yeah, of
actual
course. If they tell
follow-ups,
you to come
etc.
by, like a real follow up, but if you've burnt through that neighborhood, you've exhausted the leads you can get, the follow ups and everything else, that's great. But like outside of that, like, you know, yeah, a month, I would say, would
Yeah,
probably
the
be the
cycle around. Okay. Okay,
at the
gotcha. And
soonest.
yeah. So when we're doing this and when we're tracking, and so well, one quick thing because what you said just there, what is the real number? And we're getting close to the end here.
No, no, I'm
What's
sorry. It's just very hot under these lights.
Yeah,
The
for
jacket's got to
everybody that
come
doesn't
off.
see, if you're on YouTube, you can see what's going on. He's got like, infrared lights blasting heat on him in his
Yeah,
studio
and I've
here.
got a couple big other lights on the top. Yeah, so I'm like, oof. But
So if you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, and
yes,
uh,
thank
and
you.
and also like and subscribe. I know you've got a channel as well, so go
Oh,
find Ken
sure,
Baden.
yeah, the Ken Baden channel. Yeah, please,
Yeah, yeah,
thank
go
you,
like
thank
and
you.
subscribe that
I'm just
channel as well. But
trying
what
not to have a
last
heat stroke.
question about this, and then I want you to talk about what you guys do with Baden Consulting and all of that. The guy that says, "Oh, get the f off my lawn." how often does that really happen? Because people are so scared to start canvassing because of that. But I'm like, man, maybe 1 in 100. What do you see, and what's your experience with that?
It's funny because I've got Roger for good measure and good experience, who has been my digital media guy, who's sitting across from me, and he's been learning canvassing. So when he heard you say that, he started laughing, and I'm like, I can only tell you my past experience, and I would say, does it happen a ton? No, and he's laughing because it probably happened recently. But look, it's not. You only remember that one more than you do the nice ones. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So like when you really think about it, like, well, how many other people did you talk to today? And if
Hmm.
you were, you know what I mean? It's just that one stands out because it sucked, and if you really were to be fair with the number, yeah, it's not that many. And the reality is there's a lot of power in handling that with like just grace and like, hey man, have a blessed day, have a great day.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I think that that's a great exercise and really shows an excellent closer. The
Hmm.
guy or gal that gets, yeah, killing with kindness. If you can handle that, man, you're going to be an absolute assassin inside the house. But it doesn't happen an often, and things will happen. You
Yeah.
will likely get bit by a dog if you're in canvassing long enough, or get chased off. Look, there's a
I
horror
mean,
story for
knocking
everybody.
in Texas, I mean, we've had guns pulled on us.
I was just getting ready to say I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if I wanted to scare people away from it, but I don't know anybody that's ever had anything like happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I have had, we've had that too. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And it's like, but you know what else? We've had people make life-changing money and
Hmm.
opportunities doing this. And so
100%.
like, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah, no joke. That's why we get paid what we do,
Yeah.
because of nobody, not that many people are willing to step outside their comfort zone there.
Yep.
Well, man, this has been such a good conversation. Talk to us about how you help companies, and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Yeah, I think that's probably the most relevant right now is, if, and even then, we help by inserting very specific, I'd say, verticals into businesses. If you own a solar company, a roofing company, and right now what's really going on is the insurance restoration roofing industry is hitting a crossroads, like it's been so heavily saturated, and just, it was just so many knuckleheads, for lack of a way of describing it, that just don't know how to sell anything. And
Hmm.
so like the gold rush is over, and now the smoke's clearing, and they're like, well, what do we do? It's getting way harder. Well, yeah, there's a freaking roofer every 3 feet that can say, well, we can get this bought through your, ready to break UPA law, because you're not supposed to say any of that, but that's a whole nother conversation. We're here to teach you and teach these roofing companies the sales methodologies and the sales systems, and really just turnkey it. Like, hey,
Hmm.
listen, if you've got, now it's not cheap. And that's because, my team and myself, we have to pick who it is that we're going to work with. And it's only one or two companies that we can handle a quarter, but it's a turnkey service, man. It's coming in with the scripts, with the SOPs, the systems, and then of course the teachings to make sure you're completely set up to literally turnkey insert that retail vertical or insurance restoration or solar vertical into your business.
Hmm.
And I really enjoy doing that the most right now. I
Yeah.
take a couple coaching clients on. That's more of just of a, I like, holds me accountable, and a passion thing for me. I'm sure you can relate.
Hmm.
If I'm telling somebody else you need to be doing these things, and I need to be doing those things even more. And so maybe a couple coaching clients, but mainly the consulting is that, and that's what we're looking for.
Got
So
it. Got it. So here's a question along those lines. Say there's a company that maybe they're in a market, and they're rock solid with what their existing vertical is. If it's any of the other verticals, and they want to add something like solar or roofing or both, can you work? Is that something you do, work with those companies and then show them how to do a bolt on, and
yeah,
open up
that's
that division as
precisely.
well?
I may have said it in a confusing way, but that's really precisely what we're looking to do is add that other arm. So if you're a solar company and you want to learn how to do roofing, we can teach you how to do roofing. Now, whether it's insurance or retail, that was one of our first clients. If
Hmm.
you're a retail roofing company, you want to know how to do insurance. But if you're it does parallel nicely with the door to door theme. That's why solar and insurance restoration, like, and even retail, there are door to door elements. So that's why I traditionally kind of bounce around the three. But absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a business owner in remodeling or a business owner of any, you want to do a bolt on or add that in, like we can certainly help you do that. It's just that 90-day like turnkey promise we know we can meet when you have, say, an already existing a solar company or a retail roofing company or a
Got it.
roofing company. Does that make sense? So we
Yeah,
can still
100%.
help you. It's just we know for a fact through experience that with 90 days we can get those other guys
Get
going
them up and running.
turnkey. And yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So because I know there's a lot of other companies, HVAC or garage doors or whatever that they're running nice and solid and they're wanting to open up some other divisions or and so for example, there's a HVAC company I know of that they also do windows and remodeling. And so it would make sense to, okay, well, it's just one more step further into something else. So that's part of the curiosity of that question because I know there's a lot of guys that they've got roots in other places like this, just don't quite know how to attach it here without doing a completely separate entity, et cetera. And so
Yeah.
that's part of the origin of that question.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And I see that. I mean, I've seen so many different iterations, man. Um, was there another question behind that, or you were
No,
just
no, that's it.
explaining?
It's
Okay,
just at the end of the
okay.
day,
Yeah,
business is
yeah,
business, and
yeah.
we're
It's
adding
just
to. I could see my brain's just spinning lots of ways where I
yeah,
think we
yeah.
could
So is
possibly
mine.
even
Now that
work
you're saying
together
that, I'm
in
like,
this type of thing.
we could 100%. That's what I was actually thinking. Is there's probably something that because I know you do a whole lot. Well, you actually basically you teach something similar for HVAC, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Yeah,
And we're covering, of course, lots of home services and that type
yeah.
of thing.
Well,
So,
you're door to door G just like me, man. So honestly, I think there's probably you know, I do have to be very selective, not because I'm pompous or anything like that. I have my own business that is the breadwinner and the baby.
mhm.
And the golden rule is just, hey, as long as that doesn't get negatively impacted, and fortunately, I have enough folks and I'm delegating and I'm able to do those things to where that hasn't been the case. But, we just want to make sure that we've been so blessed to get Potomac to a certain spot that,
Mhm.
we can probably, our threshold's probably two a quarter as far as businesses, but we're just blessed, man. And
I like it.
I
I
love
like it.
doing it. So
That's cool. Well, how do people get a hold of you, man? Give us all your different channels and avenues.
the Ken Baden is the Facebook, right? Ken Baden on Facebook. Ken Baden on Facebook. And we've changed our Instagram so many times. So if you look up Ken Baden, you'll find me. But it's official Ken Baden. We have the Ken Baden on Instagram, Ken Baden on Facebook, Ken Baden on YouTube. So if you Google me, the Ken is mostly what you'll find, not Kenneth, contrary to what we talked about this morning. Ken Baden on YouTube. The Kitchen Table Podcast.net is the podcast website. Check us out on the Kitchen Table Podcast. And but most of what you'll be looking for, and of course, PotomacCustomRemodeling.com. But for me, and Baden Consulting has a website. You're more than welcome to look. But if you find me on social media, let's just have a conversation. There's a link on our social, or excuse me, our podcast website that says consulting, and clicking on that. But you can just hit me in my inbox or my DMs, and we can see if we can have a conversation, if we might be a good fit, or if you just want to holler and
Yeah,
just chat,
love it.
man. I'd be happy to do that too.
Love it. And for everybody listening, I'll make sure to get these links in the show notes. So if you're in Drive Time University, like I know most of you probably are
Thank you.
right now, absolutely go into the show notes. Every single one of these links will be there, and totally listen to this. Listen to the Kitchen Table podcast. Great show, and be on the lookout because I know for a fact that there's a good chance Ken's going to be on. We'll be sharing a stage together at some events coming up,
Yes.
and so we definitely have some. There's I feel some synergy here. There's some cool stuff we
Yeah,
can
me
do
too,
together,
man. I
and
agree. Me too.
so
Not
if you
enough people push those doors.
no, not at all. And so if I mean, who knows? Maybe we can have a all hands on deck, all home service trades, freaking door boot camp, and just crush it, knock it out of the park like that. Who knows?
That would be so awesome.
So I love it, man. I love planning this kind of stuff and then executing. So with that being said, everyone who's listened this far into the show, if that is something that you would like to hear or see from us, drop Ken a message, drop me a message. Of course, you can get me Sam at closeitnow.net. go to closeitnow.net and pop me a message in the form there, or of course join my Facebook group at Close It Now. It's all the same everywhere. Or Instagram is the real Close It Now, and shoot me a message. Say, hey, I want to do doors, and let me know. Have this event. I'll be there, and we get enough commitment. I'm sure this is something we can absolutely
Yeah,
make happen.
100%.
So
100%.
yeah, we fill a room of people. We'll show you exactly how to build this out and make it effective for your company. So, well, man, thanks for being on the show. This is cool.
Yeah, I love it, brother.
This
Thanks for
this
having
is
me,
business,
man.
man. Ah,
Yeah, this is how it comes together, man. Look at this. I really appreciate you having me, but I had a blast, dude. This has been a lot of fun.
100%.
We got to
Yeah,
do
good
it
stuff.
again.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's a whole list of topics we could cover. Good stuff. So, everybody that's listening, thanks for sticking with us. If you got value from this show, as always, go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review, hit the Googles, leave me a 5-star review on Google. The more stars that you leave and the more reviews you leave, the better guests that I can get on the show. I don't know if you knew this. When I'm reaching out to get superstars onto the show, what their gatekeepers look for is how many reviews are on that podcast before they say yes or no. So make sure to leave a review, and then we can get better and higher class people on the show, just like Mr. Ken Baden. And so glad you're here today. And for everybody out there, you know how we end this. Go be someone worth buying from.